Stop traveling, but I don't think I will. Well, maybe. I might take my old laptop. New not. Crime punishment part. A strange period began for Raskolnikov. It was as though a fog had fallen upon him and wrapped him in a dreary solitude. There was no escape. Calling very long after, he believed that his mind had continued so with the final catastrophe. As we might recall, Katerina Ivanovna passed away in the last chapter. She had a pretty ending. she got kicked out. She was trying to scrape something together with a street performer act with her kids, and she was getting increasingly frustrated. And then she succumbs to tuberculosis, passes away. Pretty sad end, honestly. He was convinced that he had been mistaken about many things that date of certain events. Anyway, when he tried later on to put his recollections together, he learned a great deal about himself from what other people told him. He'd mixed up incidents and had explained events as due to circumstances which existed. At times he was a prey to agonies of morbid uneasiness, amounting sometimes to panic. But he remembered too moments, hours, perhaps whole days of complete apathy, which came upon him as a reaction from his previous terror and might be compared with the abnormal insensibility sometimes seen in the dying. He seemed to be in that latter stage to escape from a full and clear understanding of his position. Certain essential facts, which required immediate consideration, were really irksome to him. How glad he would have been to be free from some cares, that which would have threatened him with complete, inevitable ruin. He was particularly worried about Sverdlov. It might be said to be permitting of Sverdlov. His sister's potential partner, I believe. He came to the rescue of and her sister in the last chapter as well. Heroically. In the time of Sverdlov's two menacing and unmistakable words and some of Katerina Ivanovna's death, the normal working of his mind seemed to break down. But although this new fact caused him extreme uneasiness, Raskolnikov was in no hurry for an explanation of it. At times, finding himself in a solitary and remote part of the town, in some wretched eating house, sitting alone lost in thought, hardly knowing how he had come there, he suddenly thought of Sverdlov. He recognized suddenly, clearly and with this, that he ought to come to an understanding with that man. As he could. Walking outside the city gates one day, he positively fancied that they had fixed a meeting there. He was waiting for Sverdlov. And on the ground under some bushes, and could not at first understand how he had come. But during the 2 or 3 days after Katerina Ivanovna's death, he had 2 or 3 times met Sverdlov at some lodging, where he had gone aimlessly for a moment. They exchanged a few words and made no reference to the vital subject, as though they were tacitly agreed on not to speak of it for a time. Sverdlov's really come through. I'll say that. Sonia, too, was very busy. At their last meeting, Sverdlov informed Raskolnikov that he had made an arrangement, a very satisfactory one, for Katerina Ivanovna's children, that he had, through certain connections, succeeded in getting hold of certain personages by whose help the 3 orphans could be at once placed in very suitable institutions. The money he had settled on them had been a assistance, as it is much easier to place orphans with some pride than destitute ones. He said something, too, about Sonia and promised to come himself in a day or two to see Raskolnikov, mentioning that he would like to consult him, that there were things they must talk over. This conversation took place at the passage on the stairs. Sverdlov looked intently at Raskolnikov, and suddenly, after a brief pause, "But how is it, Rodion Romanovich? You don't seem yourself. You look and you listen, but you don't seem to understand. Cheer up. We'll talk things over. I'm only sorry. I have so much to do my own business and other people's." What all men need is fresh air. Fresh air more. He moved to one side to make way for the priest and who were coming up the stairs. They had come for the requiem service. By Sverdlov's Sverdlov went his way. Stood still a moment, thought, and followed the priest into Sonia's room. He stood there. They began quietly, slowly, and mournfully. From his childhood, the thought of death and the presence of death had something impressive and mysteriously awful. It was long since he had heard the requiem service. There was something else here as well, too awful and disturbing. He looked at Polanka was weeping. Behind them, Sonia prayed softly and, as it were, timidly weeping. I gotta plug in my phone. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to follow on Twitch, sub on YouTube. I plugged you in. House Marmeladov, there's no doubt about that. But yeah, Sverdlov's helping him out. Sonia prayed softly and is weeping. These last 2 days, she hasn't said a word to me. She hasn't glanced at me, Raskolnikov thought suddenly. There he goes again, thinking about himself. He did that quite a bit. Was it 2 chapters ago when he was trying to confess to Sonia? The sunlight were bright in the room. The incense rose in clouds. The priest read, "Give rest, O Lord." Raskolnikov stayed all through the service. As he blessed them and took his leave, the priest looked around up to Sonia. She took both his hands and let her head. Yeah, it seems like Sonia's already forgiven him for the murders. But is he going to be able to evade the law? I don't know. This slight friendly gesture bewildered Raskolnikov. And that there was no trace of repugnance, no trace of disgust. It was the furthest limit of self-abnegation, at least so he interpreted it. Yeah, Sonia is very different from most different characters. Of is like depressed, moody, antisocial. They've both been through hard times, but I would say in spite of that, Sonia is still very kind, caring, and compassionate. She's of all the bad things that happened to her, she's probably the most kind-hearted character there is. Like, I would say she might even be more kind than Sverdlov. Like, she just keeps trying to help people. Self-abnegation is the denial or abasement of oneself. I think it's the opposite of being self-absorbed. Yeah, again, like, Sonia is very selfless. Like if I could use a word to describe her character, like selfless. She's like, everything that she does is for the benefit of others. Like her family's not doing well, so she turned to prostitution to support them. Her mom's out on the street because she just got kicked out. She's trying to get money to get, like, trying to get her stuff together and get off the street. Like, I probably feel the worst for her character, Sonia. Sonia said nothing. Raskolnikov pressed her hand and went out. He felt very miserable. Not much uncommon there. If it had been possible to escape to some solitude, he would have thought himself lucky, even if he had. But although he had almost always been by himself of late, he had never been able to feel alone. Um, yeah, high road, to the high road. Once he had even reached a little, the lonelier the place was, the more he seemed to be aware of an uneasy presence near him. It did not frighten him, but greatly annoyed him, so that he made haste to mingle with the crowd, to enter restaurants and taverns, to affairs. There he felt easier and even more solitary. Like he only feels alone with people. It's like when I interpret this to mean. Like I go into crowded places so I can feel by myself. One day at dusk he sat for an hour listening to songs in a tavern, and he remembered that he positively enjoyed it. He felt the same uneasiness again, as though his conscience smote him. Here I sit listening to singing. Is that what I ought to be doing? He thought. Yet he felt at once that he was not the only cause of his uneasiness. There was something requiring a decision, but it was something he could not clearly understand or put it into words. Could it have something the fact that you murdered two people and still have not come clean? Yeah, he's still on the lam. He's like, I don't care. It was a hopeless thing. No, better the struggle, better Porphyry again. Porphyry Petrovich Luzhin, or Sverdlov. Better some challenge again, some attack. He's actually pushing them both away and declined both of them courting his sister. Like he doesn't want either one of them to get with his sister. But so far, there's been a pretty big press between Luzhin and Sverdlov. Kind of see that with how they interact with other characters, like just in terms of how with Sonya, right? Like Luzhin tries to take advantage of Sonya. He invites her to his place, gives her like $10. She's leaving. He slips like $100 into her pocket, and he tries to make the case that she stole it. And then, in sharp contrast, Sverdlov, he noticed that Katerina Ivanovna's passed away. He sees that their family is not doing well. Yeah, I mean, there's pretty much nothing for him. Like there's other than like looking good to everyone else, there's pretty nothing in it for him. Like I don't even think Dumya knows about it, so maybe he's just doing it for a good deed. A good deed for the day, something. He went out of the tavern and rushed away almost. The thought of Dunya and his mother suddenly reduced him to almost panic. That night he woke up before morning in bushes in Krestovsky Island, trembling all over with fever. He was home, and it was early morning when he arrived. After some hours' sleep, the fever left him, but he woke up late, 2 o'clock in the afternoon. He remembered that Katerina Ivanovna's funeral had been fixed for that day. He was glad that he was not present at it. Nastasia brought him some food. He ate and drank with appetite, almost with greediness. His head was fresher, and he was calmer than he had been for the last 3 days. He even felt a passing wonder at his previous attacks of panic. The door opened and Razumhin came in. Ah, he's eating. Then he's not ill, said Razumhin. Took a chair and sat down at the table opposite. Razumhin, like ever the good friend, like he's Raskolnikov. He's like, yeah, I just wanted to make sure you're good, homie. Like Raskolnikov is like bedridden, like he is like very sick after he commits the murders. And he's like, yeah, I got your new girl. He shows up Razumhin's place. He's like, check on you, Raskolnikov. Hope you're doing good. He was troubled, did not attempt to conceal it. He spoke with evident annoyance, without hurriedly raising his voice. He looked as though he had some special fixed determination. Like Rasmusen's like what we would call like a type A. Like, like he's one of the university. Which says a lot. Like, listen, he began resolutely. And when his mom and sister, you could say he had motive because he's trying to. I still think he's a nice guy. It's clear to me that I can't make head or tail of it. Please don't think I've come. I don't want to know. Hang it. You've been telling me your secret. Go away cursing. I've only mosquitoes. Get them. For all whether it's a fact that you're mad. There's a conviction in the that are very nearly so. I admit I've been disposed to that opinion myself, judging from your stupid, repulsive, and quite inexplicable actions, and from your recent behavior to your mother and sister. Only a monster or a madman can treat them as you have, so you must be mad. When did you see them last? Just now. What have you been doing with yourself? To you 3 times already. Sometimes he can come across as the good friend, and sometimes he can come across as very overbearing. Like he was also extremely drunk at the time that he was trying to take care of him. He's like, I have feelings. I'll try to stay by your side. And it's like, dude, you have a house party going on right now. Why are you not at your party? Like, I don't. Yeah, definitely overbearing in a sense. I've been seen 3 times. Your mother has been seriously ill since yesterday. She had made up her mind to come to you to prevent her. She wouldn't hear a word. He's giving way. Who can look after him like his mother? She said. We all came here together. We couldn't let her come alone all the way. We kept begging her to be calm. And you weren't here, she said, and stayed 10 minutes while we stood waiting in silence. She got up and said, if he's gone out, that is, if he is well, and if he's gone and unseemly for his mother to stand at his door begging for kindness. She returned home and took to her bed. Now she's in a fever. I see, she said, that he has time for his girl. Means by your girl, Sophia Semyonovna. Your for some reason cannot internalize that a boy's love or lover is not the same as love for them. They're like, I'm the mother, I'm the money. My son should only love and care about me. There are no other women that are important at all. They don't matter. They don't exist. My boy. It's like the mother and water boy. Devil. Okay. Okay, mama. Like, I'm his mother. He will never be able to replace me. Okay, mama. Mama Romanovna. I went at once to Sophia Semyonovna's for I wanted to know what was going on. And of course, the mom always happened to be in everything. I looked around. I saw the coffin, the children crying, and Sophia Semyonovna trying them on mourning dresses. No one of you. I apologized. Came away. So that's all nonsense. The most likely thing is that you're mad. But here you sit, guzzled boiled beef as though you'd not have to bite for 3 days. As far as that goes, madmen eat too. But though you said a word to me yet, you're not mad. That I'd swear. Above all, you're not mad. So you may go to hell, all of you, but for there's some mystery, some secret about it, and I don't intend to wear my brains over your secrets. So I've simply come to swear at you. You finished getting up to relieve my mind, and I know what to do now. What do you mean to do now? What business is it of yours what I mean to do? You're going in for a drinking bout. How did you know? Why, it's pretty plain. Rasmussen paused for a minute. You've always been a very rational person, and you've never been mad, never, he observed suddenly with warmth. You're right, I shall drink. Goodbye. And he moved to go out. The day before yesterday, I think it was about you, Rasmussen. He actually recommended Rasmussen. He's like, yeah, sister, about Rasmussen, he's a pretty stand-up guy. I want to give him a holler. Trying to set him up with his buddy. Trying to set her up with his buddy. About me, but where can you have seen her the day before yesterday? Rasmussen stopped short and even turned a little pale. One could see that his heart was throbbing violently. She came here by herself, sat there and talked to me. She did. Yes. What did you say to her? I mean, about me. I told her that you were very good on. And tell her you love her because she knows that herself. Yeah, I think women have good, what's it called? Intuition when it comes to how boys and men feel about them. A lot of times you don't even have to say anything. Like, it'll just come across. Let's see. It's pretty plain. Wherever I might go, whatever happened to me, you'd look after them. I, so to speak, give them into your keeping, Rasmussen. I say this because I know quite well how you love her. I'm convinced of the purity of your heart. I know that she too may love you. And perhaps does love you already. Now decide for yourself, you know best, whether you need go. Roger, you see, well, damn it. But where do you mean to go? Never mind. But I shall find out the secret, and I'm sure that it must be nonsense, and that if you made it all up. Anyway, you're a capital fellow. Yeah, I think, I don't you know, the Svirglov's also in the running. That was just what I wanted to add. Only you interrupt. That was a very good decision of yours not to find out these secrets. Leave it to time. Don't worry. Know it all in time when it must. Yesterday, a man said to me that what a man needs is fresh air. Seems pretty obvious to me. The man stood lost in thought and excitement, making a silent conclusion. He's a political conspirator. Must be. Okay. And he's on the eve of some desperate step, that's certain. It can only be that. And Dunya knows, he thought suddenly. So Dotya Romanovna comes to see you, he said, weighing each syllable. And you're going because we need more air. And so, of course, that too must have something to do with it, he concluded to himself. What letter? She got a letter today. It upset her very much, and too much so. I began speaking of you. She begged me not to. Then she'd very soon have to part, thanking me for something. Into her room and locked herself in. She got a letter? Raskolnikov asked thoughtfully. Yes. No? Perhaps from Luzhin. Goodbye, Rodin. There was a time. Never mind. Goodbye. See, there was a time, well, goodbye. I must be off too. I'm not going to. That's all stuff. So, yeah, I got him. All right. Looking away. But you remember that murder, Porfiry's, that old woman? The murderer he's confessed and given the proofs. Here we go. How many, what are they called? False confessions? Yeah, they're false confessions. How many false confessions are there going to be over these murders? So, 2, 3 people who either he kills 2 people and there's mass chaos in the law enforcement. Mass chaos. Yeah, he's confessed and given the proofs. Raskolnikov's like, oh, really? Go on. Do go on. One of those very workmen, the painter, only fancy. You remember I defended them here. Would you believe it? All that scene of fighting companions on the stairs, while the porter and the 2 up. He got up on suspicion. The cunning, the presence of the young dog. One can hardly credit it, but it's his own explanation. He's confessed it all. It's like, what is it? The episode of SpongeBob is like, Patrick's like, it was me the whole time. What episode is that from? I don't know. I can't quite remember, but I think it's somewhat different theme to this. It's perfect crime. And I have no idea how they're not able to link Raskolnikov to the crime. Like, absolutely no idea. Let me see if I can figure it out here real quick. Yeah, it's season 2. The Smoking Peanut. Yeah. The Smoking Peanut. Same thing. I never would have thought it was me. It was you, all right. You're the one who did it. Even though you have no memory of doing it at all, and there's absolutely no evidence linking you to the crime. You were literally just around that area at the time. The cunning, the presence of mind of the young dog. One can hardly credit it, but it's his own explanation. He's confessed it all. What a fool I was about it. He's simply a genius of hypocrisy and resourcefulness in disarming the suspicions of the lawyers. So there's nothing much to wonder at, I suppose. Of course, people like that are always possible. The fact that he couldn't keep up the character but confessed makes him easier to believe in. What a fool I was. I was frantic on their side. Like the whole time I was saying he didn't do it. Tell me, who did you hear that? And why does it ask with unmistakable etch? To my knowledge, the only person that Raskolnikov yet confessed to Sonia, and I don't think she's told anyone else. What next? You asked me why it interests me. I heard it from Porphyry, among others. It was from him I heard almost all about it. From Porphyry? From Porphyry. What did he say? Raskolnikov asked in dismay. He gave me a capital explanation of it, psychologically after his fashion. He explained it himself. Yes, goodbye. I'll tell you all about it another time, but now there was a time when I fancied. But no matter, another time. What need is now? You made me drunk without wine. I'm drunk, Roja. Goodbye, I'm going. Come again very soon. He went out. He's a political conspirator, Razumhin decided as he slowly descended the stairs. Sistering. That's quite in keeping with Avdotya Romanovna's character. There are interviews between them. She hinted at it too, so many of her words and hints. How else can all this tangle be explained? Good heavens, what I thought. Yes, I took leave of my senses and I wronged him. It was his doing under the lamp in the corridor that day. No idea on my part. Nikolai is a brick for confessing. How clear it all is now. His illness then, all his strange actions. Before this in the university, how morose he used to be, how gloomy. But what's the meaning now of that letter? There's something in that too, perhaps. Whom was it from? I suspect. No, I must find out. He thought of Dunya, realizing all he heard about, and his heart throbbed, and he suddenly broke into a run. As soon as Razumhin went out, Raskolnikov got up, turned to the door, walked into one corner and then to another. So, though forgetting the smallness of his room, sat down again on the sofa. He felt, so to speak, renewed. Again, the struggle, so a means of escaping had come. Anyone and everyone is going to have to take the fall, Raskolnikov, for your crime. Like half of Moscow is going to be in jail because Albany can't take a little responsibility. Huh? You did it. And you're taking pride in the fact that you can get away with it. Gloating about it. Like the Zodiac killer. Except in this case, Kov is, he's not going to do, only killed 2 people so far, and he's not really a whole lot about it. Listening to is really Sonya. Escape had come. It had been too stifling, too cramping. The burden had been too agonizing. A lethargy, the scene with Nikolai at Porphyry's, he had been suffocating, penned in without hope of escape. After Nikolai's every day, he'd come the scene with Sonya. His behavior and his last words had been utterly unlike anything he could have imagined beforehand. He had grown feebler, instantly and fundamentally. He agreed all the time with Sonya. He had agreed in his heart. He could not go on living in his mind. Sverdlov was a riddle. He worried him, that was true, but somehow not on the same point. He might still have a struggle to come with Sverdlov. Sverdlov too be a means of escape, but he's like, how many enemies can I possibly obtain? So Porphyry himself had explained it to Razman, and he explained it psychically. He had begun bringing in his damn psychic in, but to Raskolnikov's defense, Luzhin actually was a bad guy. Like his sister is definitely better off for not up with him, for sure. Porphyry, but to think that Porphyry should for one moment believe that Nikolai was guilty after what had passed between them before Nikolai's appearance, after that tete-a-tete, which could have only one explanation. During those days, Raskolnikov had often recalled passages in that scene with Porphyry. He could not bear to let his mind rest on it. Such words, such gestures had passed between them. They had exchanged such glances, things had been said in such a tone and had reached such a pass that Nikolai, whom Porphyry had seen through at the first word, at the first gesture, could not have shaken his conviction. I think even that Razman had begun to suspect. The scene in the corridor under the lamp had put its effect then. He had rushed to Porphyry, but what had induced the latter to receive him like that? With Nikolai, he must have some plan. It's true that a long time had passed since that morning, too long a time, and no sight nor sound. Porphyry, that was a bad. Yeah, they all like that Katerina had commemorating Molodov's funeral death. That was the last time we saw Luzhin, and that dude was just about chased off with like torches and pitchforks. Like everyone was mad at the dude because of what I think Lebeshnikov was saying. Like he planted the money, and everyone's like, "Boo, get him!" He's like, "Easy, people." Raskolnikov took his gun and went out of the room, still pondering. It was the first time for a long while that he had felt clear in his mind, at least. I must settle Sverdlov, he thought. As soon as possible, he too seems to be waiting for me to come to him of my own accord. That moment, there was such a rush of hate in his weary heart that he might have killed either of those two, Porphyry or Sverdlov. Why? Sverdlov has actually turned it all around. Like he wasn't off to Raskolnikov, but he really came through for Sonya and her brothers and sisters when it mattered. So I would think that Raskolnikov seeing that might have changed his opinion on him, but based on this, I guess not. Maybe he thinks Golov's like a goody-goody for doing that or something like that. At least he felt that he'd be capable of doing it later, if not now. We shall see. We shall see, he repeated to himself. But no sooner had he opened the door than he stumbled upon Porphyry himself in the passage. Porphyry probably feels the same way about Raskolnikov, because as we might recall, he is the reason why Dunya broke up with him. he was coming in to see him. Raskolnikov was dumbfounded for a minute, but only for 1 minute. Strange to say, he was not very much astonished at seeing Porfiry and scarcely afraid of him. He was simply startled, but was quickly instantly on his guard. Perhaps this will mean the end, but how could Porfiry have approached so quietly like a cat so that he heard nothing? Could he have been listening at the door? You didn't expect a visitor, Rodion Romanovich, Porfiry explained, laughing. I've been meaning to look in a long time. I was passing by and thought, why not go in for 5 minutes? Are you going out? I won't keep you long. Just let me have one cigarette. It's just like Big Lebowski. Dude. Like, he just keeps showing up at his house. He's like, what do you people keep doing here? How do you keep finding... invited either time, as a matter of fact. He definitely was not invited this time. He just shows up. Sit down, Porfiry Petrovich. Sit down. Wow. I thought Raskolnikov was going to be like, go on, get. You ain't welcome here, get. Raskolnikov gave his visitor a seat, pleased and friendly an expression that he would have marveled at himself. Yeah, I'm just wondering why. Like, last time these two interacted was when he was accusing Sonia of stealing, and Rodion eventually came to her defense. Yeah, eventually he did. This moment had come. The last drops had to be drained. So a man will sometimes go through half an hour of mortal terror with a brigand, yet when the knife is at his throat at last, he feels no fear. Directly facing Porfiry, looked at him without flinching, began lighting a cigarette. Speak, speak. Seemed as though it would burst from Raskolnikov's heart. Come. Why don't you speak? Yeah. Venture guessed that it would end well, but I don't know. Because, yeah, it seems like every interaction that these two have is like two boy mice going at each other, or two male fight each other every single time. All right. And the Dunya and Sonia incidents are not going to improve relations between them at all. So, yeah, I predict that they're going to get into some sort of argument, fight, or something like that. All right. And that